Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Growing Web3 podcast. I'm super excited to have with me today Brian Flynn, who is the founder of RabbitHole.
Hey, James, how great to be here.
So great to have you on the show, Brian. I think we met like 3 or 4 years ago, and since then, like so much has changed. I mean, it's been awesome to kind of watch your journey as one of like the growth leaders in the space, helping projects get more contributors, users, and scale. I'd love to hear a little bit more tell everyone a little bit more about your background, and how you came to found RabbitHole.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe to take it back to the journey of how I got into crypto originally. I got into tech in 2016 when on-demand delivery was a pretty hot thing. I was trying to build a peer-to-peer delivery company using smart contracts, actually, funny enough, because I was trying to cut out independent contractor. And after doing a bunch of research, I figured out, hey, this is probably like 10 years too early. And so really just dove headfirst into crypto, being like, hey, this thing is eventually how most marketplaces are eventually going to function, with smart contracts enabled in some capacity. And so kind of just watch crypto from the sidelines, but knowing that it was going to be really big in the future. 2017, I was looking to break into crypto, and of course, it was ICO craze, and didn't really know what was going on until CryptoKitties launched in December of 2017, where it was really the first crypto application to hit 500 users that wasn't, an ICO exchange. And it was like, hey, this is really interesting and a reason why most people are downloading wallets for the first time. And so I kind of took a front row seat and just started writing about what was happening with CryptoKitties and NFTs as a whole, and became the largest NFT newsletter in the space in 2018 as well. From there, I became an employee at OpenSea after I met Devin, and worked there for a bit, and then joined Dapper Labs as a PM afterwards. In 2019, I became really fascinated by what was after NFTs and DeFi. I think I was always interested in like, what are the types of applications that can be built in crypto. I never really cared about the financial aspects. And a lot of protocols and applications at the time were really thinking about just, how do I actually get users using my protocol? At the time, most people didn't really do things on chain. People still use centralized exchanges like Binance or Coinbase. And I was really interested in the question of, how does crypto become known as an application layer rather than an investment class? So in talking to protocols back in 2019, their biggest issue was all of my token holders are on centralized exchanges and not actually using my product. And so in starting RabbitHole, the whole premise was, can we actually find better ways for protocols to engage users to use the protocol, and have token holders and users become one and the same? And so after a bunch of iterating in the early days, we came up with the concept of a quest, which is essentially a way to distribute tokens to users of protocols themselves in a time-based manner. And so that is our main product today. And so we work with some of the largest DeFi protocols and NFT marketplaces to help them distribute tokens to users who are using different things on chain. So that's kind of the TLDR.
There's a lot to kind of dig into and unpack there. So you saw NFTs like very much from the beginning. I remember, and also social tokens. I remember buying some Jam. That was your social token, right? That was and that was like launched via the newsletter as well, I think. Yeah, I remember buying that. That was super cool. So how did you kind of go to focus in on DeFi protocols if you were so early to NFTs and social tokens as well?
I mean, there's a lot there for sure. I think, I spent maybe, a good 2 or 3 years in NFT land and really came to the conclusion that most NFTs are just artificial scarcity, and aren't really decentralized. And so what I saw across the board in almost all NFT projects, which really became true in the past 2 years after NFT bull run, was lots of creators and projects selling NFTs upfront without ever delivering on a product. which is, the name of the game through and through today. And so that really isn't interesting to me personally, right? I care much more about, how do I actually participate in a network and actually, have great value from that. And so that just wasn't true when NFTs today. But I did see that, in protocols like Maker that were actually decentralized, right? And so that's why I started talking to more of like what are the things that are actually decentralized rather than, things that I can just, mint an NFT myself and sell it for something later. I think with the social tokens was particularly interesting. I mean, social tokens, no one really talks about social tokens today. They call it, DAO normally, right? But that was really an effort because a lot of people were starting to realize that once Uniswap made it really easy to create liquidity for any token with Uniswap v2, so it's, hey, I can now create a token and now I don't have to use a centralized exchange to centrally list a token. And now you had this explosion of the long tail of tokens, and namely long tail of DeFi protocols. And so really what I was trying to figure out was, as a creator that has this large NFT newsletter, can I monetize it in a crypto native way, right? And so that's when we started experimenting with token gating itself. So being able to use jams, essentially, you need to hold at least 100 jam in order to access the newsletter. And came to the conclusion that it wasn't really an efficient way of building distribution, right? There was still like, you can have, maybe like 50 readers that are holding the token, but at the end of the day, you need to create value as much as possible for the token holders, and token gating wasn't the most efficient way to do that. I think a lot of the other social tokens like FWB ran into the same issue down the road.
It was an interesting experiment with FWB. I was like quite an early holder, and I think, this idea of loyalty, or like idea of like a SaaS model, doesn't really work with tokens that well. And I think, I thought it was quite obvious early on, but it seems like people keep coming to that issue now. They're like, oh yeah, we sold our token, but now there's no recurring revenue. It's like,
yeah, no, exactly.
But it's gonna be interesting how that evolves, because I know a lot of projects are now looking at using NFTs for loyalty, and I'm kind of intrigued how that's going to work, or NFTs for like subscriptions as well. I'm intrigued to see how that works, because it seems like it's going to be fairly complex, but it'd be an awesome use case to have like subscription NFTs for content.
Yeah, it's something that people have tried for years in this space. I mean, Amber Unlock Protocol really, pioneering that use case back in 2018. And frankly, it never really took off because at the end of the day, there's just still a lot of friction involved into, buying an NFT for the first time. Most people are buying NFTs for a speculative use case. And so if people are buying subscription, and they're not using it for consuming, they're using it because they're trying to invest in whatever the underlying product is itself, which, if they're doing it for that use case, then there are probably better investments out there, frankly, right, that have probably higher upside, which is why we haven't really seen that subscription NFT use case take off.
So I wanted to dig in to, I guess, how growth marketing for Web3 has changed. So like in the bull market, we saw, lots of crazy token incentives being thrown around. And recently, I think there was a report on the Uniswap airdrop that basically showed that no one who received the Uniswap airdrop is really using Uniswap anymore, and they're not like taking part in governance. And there's this big thing over crypto Twitter, like, airdrops don't work, or they don't really work. They don't work as well as they should do. Same with like liquidity mining. There's been a lot written about how it's not very effective, although it does like help kind of bootstrap protocols. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot here to talk about, and maybe to like zoom out at the highest level. I think just to put in perspective of like where we are in the timeline, if I like to use the mental model of we're rebuilding the early internet with crypto. We're still probably somewhere in like 2001 or 2002 when at that time there really wasn't any effective metrics to define like what a valuable website really was at the time besides visitors, right? And so right now what we're doing is we're saying, hey, the only thing that really matters for protocols is number of addresses that have interacted with this protocol as a whole, which really doesn't equate to increasing token value right now, because these tokens don't have any on-chain revenues that are programmatically baked into the smart contracts. And so we're still really early into like what Web3 growth actually means. It took years for Web2 metrics to essentially pan out into the way what they are today, and has changed drastically even with the rise of mobile in 2008. And so I think we just have a long way to go into just defining what better metrics actually are. In terms of airdrops, I think a lot of protocols like Uniswap did airdrop not necessarily for user acquisition, but mostly just to get a token out there in terms of defensibility, right? They were threatened by Sushi, which was a vampire attack or a fork of Uniswap at the time, and they rushed a token out as essentially a way to provide more stickiness with their users as well. And so I think it's hard to really define, hey, did they really use that as a acquisition cost for retention, or did they use that as defensibility? And I think there's many different reasons why you would want to do an airdrop in today's world, in 2022 of crypto as well. So I think many people are still experimenting with token incentives as a growth model for a lot of these protocols. And you mentioned liquidity mining itself, which was really popular in DeFi summer, but has become less popular as people saying it wasn't really sustainable. And so it's still the lines between like what token economics actually are and sustainable models and growth incentives to actually bring in users. Those lines are still very blurry. And even most people in crypto are still really trying to figure it out.
I definitely agree that the Uniswap airdrop, like looking at it now, like 2 years later and saying, oh, it wasn't successful, is like, that's not the way it should be. Because yeah, it might not have been successful at, getting people to hold the Uni token and vote in governance. But yeah, at the time, exactly like you said, that wasn't like the purpose of the airdrop. And I also think it was a really, like, it doesn't seem that innovative right now, but actually the way it was done was pretty cool at the time, like how you could claim it from the website, and, you saw your Uni tokens, and, there was like a little bit of liquidity mining. I think they had like 2 pools open where you could earn Uni tokens. I think it was like an ETH/USDC pool. And that was all super innovative and pretty interesting. And it definitely like brought a massive amount of loyalty, I think, to Uniswap, that people were just, getting these Uni tokens. And I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, totally. And when that was happening, everyone was convinced that we were about to enter a world of an acceleration of forks, right? And everyone was talking about the fair launch model of, hey, you don't need to, raise venture capital anymore and build a team. You can go straight to your community, and your community can become contributors as well. And that's when we really saw the rise of DAOs as a whole as well. And so, 2 years later, and that didn't really pan out, but I think still a lot of people believe that it kind of gave a glimpse of what crypto can become if we really solve this question of making it super easy to fork protocols or to have vampire attacks left and right, and essentially that's really how I see Web3 growth, right? Is more so using mechanics like burning tokens and vampire attacks, and using airdrops as growth incentives to essentially incentivize users to do things. Still very early in terms of like what those tools really look like and how they function. But the interesting thing about Web3 is that we're all sharing the same database, right? And so we can see users of competitors and what they're doing on chain, and can target them directly to do additional actions on our own platforms. And that's kind of what makes it so exciting, is that those those things in Web2 are just not possible. And so experimenting with it every day on the RabbitHole side to see what exactly is possible.
I loved that period of like power to the community. I thought it was awesome. It was like fork out the VCs, full power to the community. And I mean, that was awesome with Uniswap as well. It's like, hey, this is a gift. You're our community, you're our users. Thanks for supporting us. The protocol is now 51% yours, or I don't know what the exact number was, but I really liked how it changed the narrative around token models to say you need to give your community a lot more. And yeah, some like Sushi were giving a huge amount more to the community, and others, like it became standard that people were expected to give like over 50% of tokens to the community or distribute them to the community over time. And I thought that was awesome. It was a really positive change, and yeah, it really accelerated DAOs as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that after that happened, why didn't we see more of that? It kind of went back in the opposite direction, right? That's really when FTX took center stage and started taking customer funds and investing it into different protocols on Solana as well. But it's sort of a shame because that was a really exciting part of crypto, seeing what was actually possible in terms of getting users and contributors one and the same and using token incentives as a way to do that. So hopefully it comes back in the next market.
Let's hope, or maybe before. So what do you think are going to be the key trends for the next the next 6 months, year, when it comes to growth?
So one of the things that I'm actively thinking about, and it's what's related to RabbitHole as well, is all of the play-to-earn gamers that was happening in the last bull market have transitioned to airdrop farming, right? And now you have millions of users across the world essentially trying to anticipate future airdrops and doing random actions in different communities as a way in hoping that they have some future wealth in some capacity. And a lot of protocol teams just don't know how to deal with it, frankly. And they're kind of like being overrun by these airdrop farmers. And airdrops were historically, the best way to actually launch a token because, it got tokens in the hands of the community and you had a ways of essentially supporting those early adopters. But as airdrop farming becomes more popular, you're starting to see that a lot of protocols are trying to look for alternatives. That it's no longer the case that you can build an early community and give them airdrops as a way of doing so. And so that's something we're actively thinking about with RabbitHole, how we can support these protocols a lot more with their token distributions. As they trying to incentivize contributors and users to use their platform.
Yeah, I mean, the airdrop hunters are getting pretty. It's kind of like whack-a-mole, right? It's like you increase the difficulty and then they learn quickly how to get around it. And there's been lots of like civil resistance that different protocols have tried, but then it's an interesting problem to solve. And what kind of things are you doing to solve it? Like more actions needed from the user, or do you have like data? Do you do data analysis?
Yeah. So essentially, our journey so far has been, we created this Quest product back in 2020 to make it really easy for protocols to incentivize users using Sybil as sort of a filter. And what we learned over time is that a lot of users may be Sybil resistant and unique, but they were not exactly high quality. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what high quality users for token distributions actually look like and on-chain reputation, but really came to the conclusion that it was too early. Just because a lot of on-chain reputation today is really proving to see if someone knows how to deposit tokens into smart contracts, more or less, and not really efficient ways to prove someone is skillful in any way. And so really what we've landed on is a product that makes it easy to define an allow list as a protocol and incentivize any on-chain action with a token, and spin that up in minutes, right? And so now we essentially have a product that makes it easy for a protocol to spin up a token distribution or an airdrop as easy it is to spin up an ad on Facebook, essentially, right? By just defining different user segments or an allow list in the Web3 case, and try and activate those users on their own protocol or platform. So taking a lot of similar learnings from the airdrop model and sort of providing an acceleration of it, and making it easy for protocols to do multiple airdrops over short time periods, rather than just a single airdrop itself. And so pretty excited to see how protocols are going to use it. We're probably going to launch it in about a month or so.
I'm going to look forward to using that. Sounds awesome. Coming to a close, and I have a question that I ask everyone. And I'm super interested to hear your answer. So if you were head of growth or CMO for a company protocol in the space, who would it be? Obviously can't be RabbitHole.
Oh man, let's see. It would probably be, sushi, honestly. I like it because it still represents the first fork out there, and I think they have almost nothing to lose at this point besides to be really aggressive during the bear market, and so they should just be as aggressive as possible with what they have right now, because they're already at kind of rock bottom, and so I think they could do some really interesting things by using their original DNA of vampire attacks, and so I would love to see more out of them, and I think as CMO head of growth, we could do some stuff that's really interesting.
They should experiment a lot more. I know they've got a new CEO pretty recently, and I think he's got a fairly tough job, but and I heard as well that they might have to. I think their fees are ending. Their distribution schedule's ending soon, or it's getting cut down.
Yeah. One of the problems with whether it's sushi or operating these other protocols is they just take whatever the hot protocol is at the time, whether it's like NFT marketplace, right, or like a DEX or something, right, and they just copy whatever like the best thing is out there rather than creating net new products, right? And I think that is one of the biggest problems with the crypto space as a whole, is that it's super reflexive, in that most people aren't thinking about what new types of applications actually look like, or how to use tokens interesting way, but more so, how do we just create the best version of whatever the best thing is out there. And it's just a factor of the space is moving really fast, and so when the space is moving really fast, it's just hard to have original thinking. And so if a lot of teams want to have net new products, they'll have to kind of take a big step back and rethink a lot of things from first principles.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. If people can or want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way is through Twitter. My handle is Twitter @FlynnJam.
Awesome. And I recommend following Brian. He has some extremely spicy takes sometimes on growth. So catch you on Twitter. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.